Hello and welcome to our next installment of How to Appeal to the SEND Tribunal. This session will focus on the paperwork required for a contents appeal. So if you have an EHCP and you disagree with what's written in section B, F, or I of your EHCP, then this is the session for you. So it's important to note as we begin what triggers your right of appeal. So in this situation, you've had an EHCP that has been issued for you, you've received the final, and you disagree with something that's written in section B, F, or I, then you'll receive a decision letter from the local authority along with your finalized EHCP. And that letter is what triggers your legal right to appeal. The other instance that is relevant for this kind of appeal would be if you've just had an annual review, and following your annual review, your EHCP has been finalized. It's been amended and finalized. And if you are still in disagreement about what's listed in sections B, F, and or I, then again, you'll receive your final EHCP along with a letter from the local authority via email, and that's what gives you your legal right to appeal. So the letter that you receive usually will look something like this. On the first page, it'll explain this is your final EHCP, and if you disagree with the contents of your EHCP, then on the back of the letter, it will give you the contact details for global mediation. And if you have a disagreement about the contents of your appeal, specifically if you disagree with something listed in section B or F, then you must contact the mediation company before you register your appeal. If the only thing that you are in disagreement about is section I, the school placement, then you don't need to contact the mediation company. But for every other incident, you are required to at least contact the mediation company and consider mediation as a possible way to resolve your differences. So again, this is just reiterating the legal requirement to consider mediation in all cases other than Section I appeals. So you have no later than 60 days from the date on your decision letter, so when your EHCP is finalized, in order to contact Global Mediation. And at that phone call, they will explain mediation to you, and they'll either schedule a mediation meeting between yourself and the local authority, if that's what you decide you would like to proceed with, or they will issue you with a mediation certificate. But either way, you will not lose your legal right of appeal if you decide to try mediation first. You'll still have your right of appeal, even if you choose to mediate. So when it comes to a contents appeal, how do we appeal? So what does the law say about Section B? The Children and Families Act 2014 in Section 20 says that a child or young person has special educational needs if he or she has a learning difficulty or disability, which calls for special education provision to be made for him or her. A child of compulsory school age or a young person has a learning difficulty or disability if he or she has a significantly greater difficulty in learning than the majority of others the same age, or has a disability which prevents or hinders him or her from making use of facilities of a kind generally provided for others the same age in a mainstream school or mainstream post-16 institution. And what does the law say about Section F? So the Children and Families Act, Section 37(1)(c) says, for the purposes of this part, the EHC plan is a plan specifying the special education provision required by him or her. So one of the reasons why these appeals often go hand in hand, they don't always, you can just choose to appeal one section or the other, but one of the reasons why these appeals often happen as a group is because the flow of the EHCP, the way that it is written, is supposed to follow a natural progression. So if the needs are accurately specified, then that should dictate what the provision in section F looks like, because section F, the provision, should be based on section B, the needs that are listed. So if the needs are not accurately listed, or if you don't feel they are, then that impacts what is put in section F. And then similarly, section F, the necessary provision, should have play a significant role in the kind of placement that is named on the EHCP. So when a placement is sought, the schools that are consulted are going to be looking through sections B and F and deciding whether or not they can meet all of those needs and provide all of those necessary special education resources that are listed in section F. So because the EHCP follows this kind of natural trajectory from section B dictating section F, dictating section I, that's why appeals of this type often are done as a group rather than one section or another. So when we look at what is involved with the actual paperwork, so this is what the law says about section I, and this is important to note in terms of your legal right to requesting a specific placement. So when a parent has requested that a maintained nursery, academy, or further education institution be named, or a non-maintained special school or Section 41 special school, the local authority has a duty to name parental preference unless one of the following situations apply. So Section 39(4) of the Children and Families Act lays out the circumstances in which the local authority may supersede parental preference for a school. So they have a duty to name parental preference unless the school or institution requested is unsuitable for the age, ability, aptitude, or special educational needs of the child or young person concerned, or the attendance of the child or young person at the requested school or other institution would be incompatible with the provision of efficient education of others or the efficient use of resources. So when your EHCP is sent out to consult with other schools, the schools will have to respond whether or not they can meet all of these needs and will accept the consultation, or if they feel that they can't for one of these specific reasons, then they have to give your EHCP coordinator the specified reasons as to why they feel they're unsuitable or why they feel your young person's attendance would be incompatible with the education of other pupils, or the local authority may share with you that they feel it's an inefficient use of resources. So that part usually only happens if the school that you want can meet needs and is a much higher tuition cost than another school that can equally meet your child's needs but has a lower tuition cost. Legally, the local authority is required to exercise exercise efficient use of public funds. And so they would be required in that case to choose the school that can meet your child's needs, but that is the lower tuition cost. However, if that independent school, for instance, is the only school that actually can meet your child's needs, then they are required to name that school on the EHCP. They just have to go through a process to show that they've consulted with other schools and no other school can meet your child's needs. Only this school that's independent can meet your child's needs. So that's a little bit about the legal rights around section B, F, and I, and how those parts of the EHCP are laid out and specified according to the law. Now, when it comes to appealing to the SEND Tribunal, you will need your decision letter from the local authority, which you would have received when your EHCP was finalized. You'll need your mediation certificate, unless the only thing that you're appealing is Section I alone. In all other cases, you'll need a mediation certificate. And you'll need your completed Tribunal Form SEND35. So you can just Google Tribunal Form SEND35 and the correct form will come up for you to be able to complete for your appeal. In just a moment, I'll go through a sample SEND35 that I've prepared, so that way you can have an idea of what it looks like and some examples of how you might answer the questions that are asked. For Section I appeals, it's recommended that you have a preferred school in mind so that you can compare how that preferred school matches with so that way you can compare the school that you prefer versus the school that has been named in Section I by the local authority. So it's really important because one of the things you're trying to prove is that the school you prefer can meet your child's needs. And it's hard to make that argument if you don't have anything to compare against the school that you feel can't meet your child's needs properly. So again, it's important for Section I appeals that you have an idea of what your preferred school is to compare with the school that's been named on the EHCP. It's also important to gather any evidence that you have showing why you're requesting changes to Section B, F, and/or I. And in this situation, every single situation is different, so I can't give you an exhaustive list of what kind of evidence to include, but things that might be relevant include documents from the annual review process that describe how the child or young person's needs may have changed over the last year, new professional assessments or correspondence with professional that support your views for changes to Section B, F, or I, correspondence with the school that indicate they can't meet your child's needs or that they feel additional needs or provisions should be added to the EHCP, consultation responses from the specialist schools that were consulted, Ofsted reports from the local authority's preferred school and for your preferred school. If you are submitting a Section I appeal, that is something you should include, is the Ofsted report for the school you want versus the Ofsted report for the school that's been named. And those can easily be found online if you just Google Ofsted report and the name of the school. And all of these documents should be sent in to send@justice.gov.uk with new appeal in the subject line. So now I'm going to take you to our sample tribunal form, and we'll go through the specific SEND35 form, so that way you can see an example of what to include. Okay, so this is your SEND35 form, and I filled this out as if we are making an appeal for sections B, F, and I. One really important thing to note is that the boxes that are on this form where you give your reasons for appeal, they limit you to the specific word count within those boxes. So it is strongly recommended that you put your reasons for appeal, you lay out your arguments for why you're requesting changes to Section B, F, and I, and what changes you're requesting, that you put all of those in a separate Word document, so that way you have enough space to fully describe your situation and explain the reasons why you're asking for these changes to be made. So Section 1 in this SEND35 form, again, is just describing the child or young person that the appeal is about. And this particular form, I filled this out from a purely fictitious case. This is using examples of things that we often hear come through SIAS. So this is not about one particular case. This is just bringing together general themes that we hear frequently to use as an example for you. So I want you to be assured all of our casework is confidential, and this form has been filled out as a purely fictitious example case. So the person that we are filling this out for here, this is a child under 16 years old. So you would just click that and then put the name, gender, and date of birth in here. Now this section 2 is the one that's a little bit tricky for people because you have to kind of read each and every sentence here to make sure you select the right boxes. But in the case of a contents appeal, you'll select this second box. The local authority has issued an EHCP following a needs assessment. And, or if the situation is that you've had an annual review and you want changes after the annual review, you click this box instead. And then you come down to the bottom here. So, and I disagree with what the EHCP says about the child or young person's special educational needs, section B. I disagree with what the EHCP says about the special education provision, section F. I disagree with the school or college or institution that's been named on the EHCP, section I. Okay, so now the next page here is related to section I. It says, if you are appealing against section I of the EHCP, please provide the name and address of the school or institution that you're asking the tribunal to name instead. So I've just given an example, Specialist Secondary School and address. And then further down here, it says, please confirm that you have contacted the school about the young person attending there and the date you did so and any response they made. So I've put here on the 15th of February, 2024, Specialist Secondary School have said they can meet need and have a place for her, but this change of placement was not agreed at the SEN panel. So that's an example that you might include. Now, this next box here says, if you cannot name a particular school, college, or institution, then please describe the type of school, college, or institution you would prefer in section I. So one legal alternative is for the local authority to name by type in section I. So this would be, they would put either mainstream or specialist in section I while they're seeking a placement. So that is an option. However, if a specific school has been named in section I, then it can be really helpful to have a preferred specific school to compare those two schools. So that way it's apples to apples and you're not doing apples with oranges. So again, I would encourage you, if there's a specific school that has been named in section I that you don't want your child to go to, then it's important to think of what your number one preferred school would be, and to fill this paperwork out requesting a place at that preferred school, so that way you can compare the two schools. If the local authority has named by type, so for instance, if they have named by type mainstream and you really want your child or young person to go to specialist, then that's an example here of where you would put specialist here, and then you are comparing the child's needs mainstream versus specialist. If the local authority has named specialist by type, but they haven't named a specific school, that is legal, and that will be a more difficult case for the tribunal, because legally the local authority is able to name by type rather than naming a specific school. So that hopefully explains a bit more about your legal rights in this area. So as we come further down, there's a question here. If you'd like the tribunal to make recommendations for the health and social care needs section of your EHCP, you can ask them to do that, but that's not very common. And then we come to section 3, and this is the reasons for appeal. And this is the section that I would strongly encourage you to make a note of all of these questions and answer them to your fullest ability in a separate Word document rather than trying to stay within the confines of the boxes provided. So the first question here says, I am bringing the appeal because, and I've said, An EHCP has been issued for Jane, but Section B does not include anxiety and self-esteem as special educational needs when these are both significant barriers to Jane's ability to access education. While Section F says that she needs both small group and one-to-one TA support in reading intensive lessons, it does not specify how many hours of one-to-one support versus how many hours of small group support she requires throughout the week. I am appealing to have this specified and quantified in Section F in accordance with what her EP feels she needs for her learning. And then the next box here says, I disagree with the description of special educational needs in Section B because, and again, I've just reiterated, Jane's primary barrier to education is anxiety and low self-esteem. These need to be added to Section B as standalone needs. And the next section here says, I disagree with the specification of special education provision, Section F, because, and I've written, Section F does not specify and quantify the amount or type of adult support Jane requires for her learning needs. Instead, just says a combination of one-to-one TA support and small group learning throughout the week. This needs to be specified so that any school reading her EHCP will know exactly what she should be receiving. Furthermore, because anxiety and self-esteem are not in Section B, no recommendations have been provided to Section F under social, emotional, mental health. So I would like a robust package of social, emotional, mental health support to be added to Section F as recommended by a professional to meet her needs. The next section here says the local authority have not considered, and I've said, as we have been waiting for an EHCP to be completed for Jane, her level of anxiety and overall level of need has increased significantly. Mainstream school is no longer suitable to meet her needs due to this change in presentation. The next section here says, I disagree with the local authority's choice of school in Section I because, and I've said both her mainstream secondary school and us, her parents, feel the mainstream secondary school is no longer able to meet her needs and feel a specialist placement with smaller, quieter classrooms and a higher level of nurture would be the appropriate placement for her. She finds the sensory environment of the secondary school physically painful, and even with the provisions listed in her EHCP, she would still not be able to learn in that environment because of the negative memories she has there, which she can't move past, and her ongoing sensory struggles in the physical layout of the school. And the next question says, I prefer my school for Section I because, and I've put specialist secondary school offers small classes of 8 to 10 pupils with similar needs to Jane's. The space is designed in a sensory-friendly way, and there is no requirement to transition between classes. Furthermore, they offer a high level of nurture and anxiety support from their on-site psychologist, which Jane requires. They have stated that they can meet her needs and can offer her a space. So the next section here, Section 4, this would only be filled out if you are asking the tribunal to make recommendations for health or social care. So we'll skip down to the bottom here because we're not asking for anything to be, any recommendations to be made for health or social care. In Section 5, it says making the appeal. So you'll put the London Borough of Sutton as the local authority whose decision you're appealing against. And then the date on the decision letter from the local authority, I've just put the 1st of March, 2024 as our fictional date. And then finally, at the bottom of this page, it asks about if you're making the appeal late or if there's no mediation certificate. And I would strongly recommend that you get your appeal in within 2 months of the date on that letter. So that way you don't have to worry about filling these out, because if your appeal is being made late or if you don't have a mediation certificate, then they may make a decision whether or not to admit your appeal. Whereas if you make your appeal on time and with all the necessary materials, then they will definitely register your appeal. So you don't want to take the risk of them saying that your appeal can't be registered because it's been made late. So If there is a good reason, then you would fill this part out, but usually families are able to submit all of their information within the 60 days. All right, Section 6, who is making the appeal? So this is where you as the parent carer would fill out your information. So I've just put mother, Jill Doe, address, phone number, email address, and your relationship to the child. If you want to add a second parent or someone else to the appeal, you may, but you don't have to. And Section 7 is for any other person or organization who shares parental responsibility for the child or has been appointed as deputy by the Court of Protection for a young person. So if that very specific situation applies to you, then you would fill this out. But if it doesn't, just leave it blank. And again, for the section here where it says your advocate, this is if you are a young person writing the appeal document yourself. If you are a young person making this appeal on your own, then you would put your advocate's information here. This wouldn't be something that a parent carer would fill out for their advocate. This would only be for a young person's advocate. And the next section here is representative. So the tribunal system is designed in such a way that you shouldn't need a legal representative to register your appeal for tribunal. However, if you have a particular set of needs where you're unable to complete the appeal information for yourself and you may need someone from SIAS to support you with the paperwork and with answering questions about the appeal process, or if you've registered for legal aid, or if you've employed a solicitor and you want them to act on your behalf as representative, then this is where you would add all of that information. But again, you don't have to have a representative in order to register for an appeal. You can just have your appeal done by you yourself as the parent carer. And now this question down here is who should receive information about the appeal. So if you have other people involved, so if there's another parent or if there is a representative involved, you need to select which one person is going to receive all of the documents from the tribunal, because they will only send them to one person. So pick here who you would like to be the primary point of contact for the tribunal and click the appropriate box. And now Section 8 here, this has to do with the your needs for the hearing itself. So for content appeals, these often come as oral hearings where right now anyway, in 2024, these are done as virtual meetings with the tribunal and the local authority. So this is where you would describe any special needs that you as the parent may have, or that, you know, if the young person's coming with you, you would describe those here as well. So I've just said here that the parent in this case is dyslexic, so that way the tribunal are aware of that. And also, if you have need of a signer or someone to do interpretation for your language needs, then this is also where you would add those details as well. Section 9 is asking you whether or not you would consent to your hearing being done as a paper hearing rather than an oral hearing. So as I said, the normal way of working is for these kind of appeals to be done as oral hearings. However, if you as the appellant, the local authority, and the judge all are in agreement to have a paper hearing, then what that means is the judge will receive all of the documents. They'll look through your views and the evidence that you've submitted and the local authorities' views and the evidence that they've submitted, and they'll make a decision based on the written evidence alone. So if you feel that, you know, your evidence is really strong and you don't feel like you want to stand up and say your testimony before the judge, then you can click yes here. And sometimes that will result in a faster hearing than going through the oral hearing process. And then similarly, the next question is whether or not you consent to the hearing being listed on an earlier date if one becomes available. Everyone wants a hearing as early as possible because it does take a long time for that hearing date to come around. For this box about the paper hearing, it is your right, however, if you want an oral hearing and you don't want your case just to be judged on the papers, then you can select no here. You don't have to select yes. So that's important to note as well. And then the next box here is asking you about any existing claims that you have. So do you have any other claims for the tribunal that are ongoing or about a sibling of the child at hand? And if it's yes, then click yes. If no, then click no. And then finally, we come down here to the checklist. So the checklist here is just for your reference to help you remember what you need to include. So you need your signed and dated letter from the local authority, which gives you the legal right of appeal. You need your copy of your mediation certificate. You need your reasons for making your appeal. So if you do fill out a separate Word document with all of your reasons for making your appeal, you need to make sure to include that. Excuse me. And then you need a copy of your child's EHCP and all of the documents that are listed in that EHCP. So the plan itself, plus all of the assessment reports that made up that EHCP. And then finally, this appeal form signed and dated. And you can sign this virtually and date it below. And then, as I mentioned before, the way you submit all of this is to email everything as attachments, preferably in the same email if possible, to send@justice.gov.uk with new appeal in the subject line. If you have to split them up into separate emails, that's okay. Just do, put new appeal, child's name in the subject line, part 1 of however many emails it takes. And then this final page here is just where you would list all of the evidence that you are including with your appeal. So some examples of this might be EP assessment report, speech and language report, OT report, a CAMS letter about the anxiety, the mainstream schools response to consultations, the mainstream schools Ofsted report, specialist schools response to consultations, the specialist schools Ofsted report, a list of any other schools that were consulted with their responses. Again, I said it's this is very contextual. So every single case will have different things that they include for their evidence, but this is just an example. And then of course you'll put the date or approximate date, number of pages, and the person who wrote each of these documents. And then you will send all of that off to send@justice.gov.uk as your appeal. Thank you very much. If you have any further questions or need support, you're always welcome to contact SIAS and we'll give you the support that is necessary to help you uphold your legal rights. Thank you. Bye-bye.